Calipatria State Prison, located in Calipatria, California, which resides in Imperial County, opened in 1992, about 22 months before the other Imperial County prison known as Centinela State Prison. It houses over 2,500 inmates, and an interesting fact, it actually sits a couple hundred feet below sea level. In 2019, California Governor Gavin Newsom signed an executive order that halted the death penalty in the state of California. The order also called for the closure of the state's execution chamber at San Quentin State Prison, and the last execution that took place in California was in 2006. One of the inmates who benefited from this executive order that halted the death penalty in California was a Mexican Mafia member who went by the name of Alberto Martinez, a multiple-time convicted killer who on September 26, 2024, inside of Calipatria State Prison, was brutally beaten to death by 3 inmates.
Death row shut down today. Pictures from San Quentin show the chair and table used for lethal injections being hauled away and the death chamber shut down following Governor Gavin Newsom's announcement that he's putting a moratorium on executions. Newsom signed the executive order this morning, halting executions in California, granting a reprieve to the state's 737 death row inmates, at least for now. It does not, however, release any inmates from prison or change any current convictions, but it does essentially put Prop 66 on hold. That's the measure voters approved 3 years ago to speed up the death penalty process. Action News reporter Mike Lurie with more from the state capitol.
To me, this is the right thing to do.
Flanked by prominent Democrats, Governor Newsom today ordered San Quentin's death chamber to be shut down.
The law is the law. This is crystal clear. The Constitution of the state of California provides the governor the ability to reprieve, the ability to do this moratorium.
But does Newsom really hold that power? We asked legal expert Leslie Jacobs, a professor at the McGeorge School of Law in Sacramento.
He does have the authority to give reprieves to the people who are on death row, and so these are temporary measures and they last during his governorship.
And after that?
And after that, well, we'd have to see what the next governor would do.
So for now, the death chamber is closed. But what about future death penalty cases? We put that question to Sacramento District Attorney Anne Marie Schubert.
Well, the governor doesn't have the power to take away our power, which is to seek it, because the California voters, passed 66 that says it's still going to be here. So he can't take that power away from prosecutors.
So in the future, murderers could be sentenced to death row with no chance of being executed as long as Gavin Newsom is governor. And that's upsetting to Assemblyman Tom Lackey, a former CHP sergeant.
So these are monsters. These are people that families are expecting some semblance of justice. And now the governor has taken a position against the will of the people.
Newsom is generating plenty of heat from Republicans, but also strong emotions from Democrats, like Public Safety Chair Nancy Skinner, who says she understands the pain of crime victims.
I can't imagine losing any family member to a murderer. And I wouldn't want to murder that person who killed any family member of mine. But I cannot also execute an innocent person. And so I just admire what he's done.
Mike Lurie, KSBW Action News 8.
Governor Newsom says he will support efforts to ban the death penalty permanently through legislation or constitutional amendment. But opponents are also promising a fight, vowing to put their own constitutional amendment on the ballot that would overturn what the governor did today.
There's 4,300 inmates at Calipatria State Prison, and about 300 of those are considered the worst of the worst in California. Calipatria State Prison holds murderers, rapists, and all sorts of criminals. The Level 4 maximum security prison has been home to notorious inmates like hillside strangler Kenneth Bianchi, fire captain turned serial arsonist John Orr, and drug dealer hitman Jesse James Hollywood. With such violent criminals, correctional officers need to be prepared for anything. The Administrative Segregation Unit holds some of the prison's most dangerous inmates.
The administrative segregation, where inmates that pose a threat to themselves, the institution, or others are placed.
Prisoners that assault others or try to smuggle hard drugs into prison get sent here.
Inmates in ASU would be in their cell for about 23 hours a day, and they have about an hour of yard. They would have their showers every other day, every 72 hours.
Cells are made of cement. In the yard, they're still separated to prevent riots and conspiring with other inmates. The correctional officers at ASU must always be on alert. If ASU inmates leave the cell, they're handcuffed and constantly watched.
Have to be in restraints, in handcuffs, coming out of the cell, and escorted by one officer, hands-on escort, which means that they would be guided by their arm. And that's to ensure that they don't fall or cannot leap at somebody and try to assault them.
Even in the law library, these inmates remain in a small holding cell. Correctional officers can't let their guard down anywhere in the prison. Just recently, an inmate used his own head as a weapon to assault a sergeant and 2 officers.
If anybody wants to attack an individual, they will not care for their personal well-being and will use whatever they can.
We have, serious offenders here. This prison, I would say, almost on a daily basis, some scale of response or code.
The prison has its own shooting range. Here, officers get tested on their shooting skills once a year or every 3 months if they're at a gun post.
Handgun course of fire, 40 millimeter direct impact, which is our less lethal. And then we also go through familiarization with chemical agents.
The critical response team acts as the prison SWAT team, learning to deal with riots and hostage situations.
Teachers work with them. We deal with them all day long, doctors. So at any time, anything could happen.
That's why officers say they're always prepared. And one of the biggest issues is the smuggling of drugs, weapons, and phones into the prison. I'll take an inside look at that tomorrow on Nightside. Back to you. Inmates can turn everyday items into a weapon. Take this ordinary CD case. It can be melted and sharpened into a deadly tool like these. Drugs, weapons, phones. An elite group of investigators at Calipatria State Prison tracks down inmates, visitors, and employees smuggling this contraband.
Any and all means they're going to use. If they have the opportunity to use it, or if it's been tried and tested in the past and been successful, they're going to attempt to use it again.
Meet the men and women of the Gang Investigations Team, a part of the Security Investigations Unit. In 2011 alone, they had 616 reportable incidents. Within these prison walls, this team constantly finds weapons.
We spend our day protecting these guys from each other mostly. But also a grave concern of ours is the safety of our staff that come to work here.
Look here, a sharpened toothbrush, a melted CD case. But fighting crime against convicted criminals remains challenging.
When we change our tactics and start using something that's effective like that against them, they change their tactics.
The most common drugs they find in these prison walls are marijuana and heroin. There's also been a big increase in methamphetamine.
So if they can smuggle in small packaging that has considerable monetary value, they're going to take that route.
Pictures show different methods of smuggling. Investigators find drugs hidden in mail, a Bible, or even a child's card to a parent behind bars. These wrap packages are called bindles, and they're one of the most common ways of smuggling. And this little package alone is worth $800 of heroin. How do they get the bindles in? Often through visitors. Their mechanisms are shocking, sometimes swallowing bindles or worse.
It's very common, becoming even more common, for them to package a bindle, secrete it inside their rectal cavity in an attempt to avoid detection by staff. Like I said, any and all means, they will do it.
Inmates don't always get these drugs for their own use. They often sell it for the prison's drug market.
You'll see that money funneled up to them as a form of respect and following their political rule.
Investigators say money is also used to put hits on people on the streets, harass victims, and tamper with jury members and witnesses. That's also why investigators say cell phone smuggling is so scary. In 2011, the Gang Investigations Unit tracked down 651 phones. They found 12 in the first few days of this year.
Their victim that they victimized years ago on the streets and they were sent to prison for, they're able to search down that person and send messages without detection.
Facebook only recently agreed to take down inmate profiles. Investigators say prisoners often get phones and cash from corrupt employees. Top prison officials say they have a zero-tolerance policy for illegal behavior.
A simple cell phone that sells for $20 and $30 on the streets, they'll bring in here and they'll sell for $500 to $800. If they're willing to bring in one of the new the advanced phones, the smartphones, they'll sell that for $1,100 to $1,200.
When contraband and suspected smugglers are found, everything on this table is vital. Evidence for bags, flex cuffs, and cotton swabs, trying to keep life behind bars as crime-free as possible. But the prison is turning a negative into a positive. Every single usable cell phone that they confiscate is turned over to victims of domestic violence. Reporting from Calipatria State Prison, Rachel Alzafan, News 11. Back to you.
What's going on, you guys? Welcome back. Another episode of Greenlit Gang TV. Much love, much appreciation. Thank you guys so much for checking out the channel. Man, got a really good one for you guys today. A relatively new one, too, as this case, this whole case just took place about 5-6 months ago, end of September in 2024. So like we talked about in the intro, we're covering Calipatria Prison, which is like as southern as it gets. You're in within Imperial County, another big prison over there, like we talked about, Sentinel State Prison. They are very, very violent prisons. A lot of stories come out of here. A simple YouTube search, a simple Google search, you'll see what I'm talking about. A lot of ex-corrections officers, gang members that have done time and gotten out will talk about it. These are very active yards, a lot of stabbings, a lot of beatings. Again, I'm not as educated on some of the levels, but I believe these places are like level 4 yards, level 3 yards. And like they talk about on some other channels I've watched, some of these places, they don't beat you. It's like weapons only. And kind of this is what happened with this case. So 2019, Governor Newsom comes in, gets rid of or puts a moratorium, executive order, halts all the death penalty cases. All right. Now, main character of this, a guy by the name of Alberto Martinez, who was 46 at the time he was murdered. We're going to be getting into that very in depth. Was somebody who was convicted of multiple murders and was sentenced to death. We're going to be talking about the particular case that he was sentenced to death for, and kind of how he wound his way through the criminal justice system and the prisons he went to, and what ended up being his end. So I'm going to be reading from a couple articles. This first one was just a couple days after basically the killing. September 26, 2024, Alberto Martinez, a Sureno gang member and a La M associate. Now, that's one big thing I want to make clear with Alberto Martinez. And I almost messed up by saying he was a member. No, he even said in his own court appearance when the LA Times was covering him, they did a story where he was like one of the main feature people that talked to the LA Times about how the Mexican Mafia operates with contraband cell phones and how they're basically able to control everything that goes on behind the prison walls and on the streets. With these cell phones, okay? And he mentions that a lot. And sorry if you hear the little footsteps. That's my little dog running around. Forgive me. I worked all day. I'm able to shoot this at night. But anyway, so he's a La MA member associate, and he's from Castaic, California. It's an unincorporated area in Southern California. Really tried to get some background on this guy. And he was initially a member. He's a Sureno gang member, and he was from the Pacoima Flats area, which is a neighborhood in the San Fernando Valley. Starts getting his rep from there. All right. So Pacoima Flats, Sureno gang set, which is a neighborhood in the Pacoima Flats gang is the Sureno gang set, and the Pacoima Flats is a neighborhood in the San Fernando Valley region of LA. Continuing with the article, a convicted killer was brutally beaten to death by 3 other inmates inside a California prison, according to authorities. 46-year-old Alberto Martinez was knocked to the ground and beaten by 3 inmates in the prison yard at Calipatria State Prison in Imperial County on Thursday, California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation said in a press release on Friday. The attack unfolded at around 1:23 p.m., when officials alleged that 25-year-old Sureno gang member Tyler Lua struck Martinez, knocking him to the ground and repeatedly striking him. Other gang members, 2 other inmates, jumped in. Jorge Negrete Larios, 33, and Luis Beltran, 31, then began striking Martinez, quote, as he lay motionless. So basically Tyler Lua walks up, begins hitting him, knocks him to the ground. He steps back. These other 2 guys run in and continue the assault. Staff did reportedly react pretty quickly. They broke up the altercation using pepper spray and a baton and performed life-saving measures on the 46-year-old. He was rushed to the prison's urgent care treatment area before being pronounced dead an hour later. And then they were talking about, and like I said, this article was basically within a day or 2 after it happened. At the time, a coroner was going to release the cause of death, and ended up being what it was. Stabbing, beating. They brutally killed this guy. No other staff or prisoners were injured in the incident. The motive for the attack remains unknown. The 3 suspects have now been placed in restricted housing pending an investigation, the CDCR said. Martinez had been held at the facility since 2014 after being sentenced to death for first-degree murder. He was also sentenced to life with the possibility of parole for another attempted murder with an enhancement for, what do we always talk about on this channel? Street gang activity, and another 2 years on top of that, which it's like, I don't even know why they bothered in putting that in there, but another 2 years for additional street gang activity. But we talk about those gang enhancements, guys. If you're an active gang member, they can prove it. You're tied in with the right people, or I should say the wrong people. You're going to get additional time, and it's serious additional time. Martinez was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder and street terrorism in the killing of Orange County businessman David Montemayor in 2002, according to the Orange County Register. Now, this was a crazy case, and I was going to kind of breeze over it, but no, this case itself almost deserves its own video, which it's been featured on like Snapped, it's been featured on other like ID channel. They have those certain murder shows, and then they have episodes within those murder shows. It's all included in there, okay? Excuse me, from David Montemayor. During his trial, jurors heard how Martinez and 3 other gang members were recruited by the victim's sister to kidnap and kill him, officials said. Quote, 2 incarcerated manufactured weapons were discovered at the scene. Now, that last line, that was from Martinez's killing. That was from Martinez's killing in September of 2024. But he was initially sentenced to death for the 2002, and it was actually October 2nd, 2002, that him and 3 other gang members were responsible for the murder. He was a married man, had 3 young children, David Montemayor. All right, now, reading from that story, October 2nd, 2002, from that article, October 2nd, 2002, this is it's called Bad Blood, examines the savage murder of David Montemayor, who was gunned down just as he was about to take over the family company. Rewind back about 23 years, and 44-year-old David Montemayor is married with 3 children, ages 7, 9, and 11, when he is gunned down in an apparent gang robbery, which is what the initial thought was. David, who lost an arm in a childhood accident, worked alongside his father and his sister Perna at their company, Interfreight Transport Company in Compton. However, not was all as well as it seemed. His sister believed that David was stealing from the business and was incensed that her father was going to leave the company to her brother. So what is kind of what they talk about, the root of all evil? It's money, all right? And it will tear families apart. It will get this sister to think and just sit there and brew in her head and be paranoid, and my brother's stealing, he's got money, my dad doesn't see it, I gotta kill him. She used a contact to hire Pacoima Flats Street Gang Member Anthony Navarro, who went by Droopy, to murder her brother in exchange from some cash she said that her brother hadn't hid at his home. She thought that her brother had $50,000. She was like certain he's got 50 grand. He has 50 grand. Navarro agreed and asked his friends, Gerardo Lopez, Armando Macias, and our murder victim and main character, Alberto Martinez, to help him carry out the crime. All of these guys are Pacoima Flats gang members themselves, Sureno gang members. They're tied in with the Mexican Mafia. These are street dudes. And I know what the sister's thinking. The sister's thinking, I'm going to make this look like a gang robbery. I'm not going to have any ties to it, and I'm going to get everything I wanted. They kidnapped David. They forced him to drive towards his home to get the money. But David, being smart and brave, was aware that his wife and his children were there. And so instead, he drove towards another intersection. This is crazy. He manages to get out and run. However, and he didn't want to basically risk it's obvious why he ran. He didn't want to risk his wife and his 3 children's safety. As he's running in a desperate bid to get away, he was shot once in the head, was murdered. And everything unfolded. That's as far as we're going to go on it. If you want, check it out. David Montemayor murder. You'll find it. It's easy to read. It's a great story. But this is what gets Alberto Martinez sentenced to death. Despite being initially sent to death row, continuing with the article, Martinez was moved to general population after California Governor Gavin Newsom issued a moratorium on executions in 2019. Now, what that means is, guys, if Newsom leaves office and another governor comes in and says, yeah, we're not doing this anymore, those executions can pick right back up. I think right now there's like over 620 some inmates currently still with condemned sentences. Excuse me. Negrete Larios is serving a 32-year and 4-month sentence for attempted second-degree murder with enhancements for inflicting great bodily injury, discharge of a firearm, and street gang activity and commission of a violent felony. The third suspect, Beltran, is serving life without parole for first-degree murder with enhancements for intentional discharge of a firearm, causing great bodily injury, death, as well as possessing, owning a firearm as a felon. And Lua, the main guy in all this, the young guy, the 25-year-old, who had been behind bars at Calipatria State Prison since 2019, was serving a 19-year sentence for attempted second-degree murder with an enhancement for use of a firearm. And he's also serving a 2-year sentence for possession of a controlled substance while in prison. So that means he got caught with contraband drugs while being locked up. Martinez's death comes 4 years after another inmate died at the prison after being allegedly attacked by fellow inmates. Joseph Martinez, 21, who was serving 24 years to life for attempted first-degree murder, was fatally stabbed in the chest and the back in February of 2020. Calipatria State Prison is home to at least, and like I said, 2,500 or more in the intro. It's actually this exact number, which is a much more recent article. 2,638 minimum and maximum security prisoners, according to California prison authorities. Now, the last one we're going to read from is from the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation's website. Give it a little bit more info, just a little bit. Like I talked about, guys, I like to read from different sites on all this. Okay, so it talks about how the 2 incarcerated manufactured weapons were found at the scene. That's what was used to kill Alberto Martinez. I'm just reading a little bit. So staff immediately initiated emergency response and called 911. Medical staff performed life-saving measures. Martinez, who had injuries consistent with an incarcerated manufactured weapons, which means staff's going to, and that's why I like to just read from different parts, because that wasn't mentioned in the first article, says. So prison medical staff's going, yep, these are consistent with like a homemade knife, a shank. And that would be a lot different from a regular kitchen knife or a hunting knife or something like that. These are sometimes sharpened down pieces of metal. These are very brutal, blunt, sometimes poorly made, sometimes greatly made objects. And it's just a messy, messy kill. So he's transported for a high level of care, but his exact time of death was exactly at 2:20 p.m., which was just over exactly an hour from when the staff observed incarcerated person Tyler Lua strike Martinez. And this was like Sureno on Sureno murder. These guys were all gang members. Right now, Martinez, and because this case is so new, I couldn't find like an exact reason. I couldn't find an exact, okay, this is why he was murdered. But I read about where it says that the Los Angeles Times did an article, and he was the feature of the article. He's talking about the Mexican Mafia, who's an associate of, who he kind of, I don't want to say brags about, but he openly talks about, yep, I'm an associate with these guys. I'm a Pacoima Flats Gang Member, this, and this. Oh, yeah, they use cell phones for this. He openly admits being an associate in court. I don't pretend to have the biggest understanding, but I feel like through my channel and just research I've done even before I started this channel, I feel like I know more than the average person. And I do know that they do not like you talking like that. There's no way that the leaders and the people who run the show for the Mexican Mafia like seeing Alberto Martinez talk about how important cell phones are and what they're able to pull off. Oh, and he bragged about how he could make a phone call from a cell phone inside prison and have somebody killed. That was the other thing. How, yeah, I'm able to order murders with this, with my contraband cell phone. Do I know that's why he was killed? I don't. But until something else comes out, and again, I will give you guys an update on this. If, in a few months or whatever, something pops off, they get sentenced, I'll mention it. If it's something worth making a whole nother video about, I absolutely will. Like if a whole nother motive arises, absolutely, I'll make a new video. But had to bring this one to you guys. Really, really interesting. It was a brutal beating. It was, like I said, Lua gets in there first, then Negrete Larios and Beltran. It was nasty. It was really, really bad. Striking him, beating him, kicking and stomping him, stabbing him. It just, they got after him a lot. They put in their work. Anyway, there you guys have it. Much love, much appreciation. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time, you already know what it is. Peace.